let's move to the Big Ten West Division. Before we do that, if you want to subscribe to Jim Fife's YouTube page, it's called Sports Betting. Just click on the link above us and you'll get updates on videos that Jim has on free picks and other updates for college and NFL games that are coming up. Also, if you want to go to the jimfife.com website, you can click on the link above us as well, and that'll take you right to the site. There's articles on football previews, there's free stats, and new members will get a $50 credit just for signing up. All right, let's move to the Big Ten West. I'm going to start with the Wisconsin Badgers. They're off an 11-3 season, straight up 7-1 in the conference, 6-8 against the spread. They do have 6 starters back on offense and 8 on defense. However, quite a few changes to keep in mind for the Badgers. First of all, a new coach, Paul Chryst, is actually returning to Madison after a 3-year stint as Pittsburgh's head coach. And then Melvin Gordon, the big story last year, he is off to the NFL. And boy, what an offense the Wisconsin had last year, 34.6 points per game, and it was mainly on the ground, 4th in the nation in rushing with 320 yards rushing per game. Gordon is gone, but senior quarterback Joel Stave is back. You know, last year he didn't have very good numbers, wasn't asked to throw very often, but when he did, he had 9 touchdowns, only 10 interceptions, and 53% completion. Certainly regressed, but keep in mind when he was a junior and had to throw more, back in 2013, he was pretty good. 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, over 2,400 yards passing, and 62% completions. Now, the backfield for Wisconsin, yeah, they lose Gordon, but look at these other guys they had behind this great offensive line. Junior running back Corey Clement, he is back. This guy had 949 yards rushing, 6.5 yards per carry, and they've got a senior quarterback in Tanner McAvoy back. He ran for 709 yards, 8.8 yards per carry. So even if you throw Gordon out, this ground game was exceptional. It has a couple of key players returning. Offensive line, though, did lose some key players to the NFL. And the passing game could be better with junior wide receiver Alex Erickson back. He has 772 yards, 14 yards per reception. And they got a big sophomore tight end in Corey Fumagalli. He's back and has some experience. He's a 6'5 sophomore. Now, the defense was terrific last year, 17th in the nation, giving up 20.8 points per game. The problem is they don't return a single player on the interior linebacking core who has experience. They do have a couple of guys stepping in Leon Jacobs. He's a junior, and Dakota Dixon. The secondary, though, is going to be very good. You got a strong senior in Sojourn Shelton, as well as Darius Hillary at cornerback. He's also a senior. Now, the schedule, last year they opened with LSU at Reliance Stadium. Well, this year it doesn't get much easier. They're going to be playing Alabama in Arlington, Texas. After that, it's 4 winnable home games before they got some road games at Nebraska, at Illinois, at Maryland, at Minnesota. Not that difficult. The revenge game to keep in mind will be November 21st. They're going to be hosting Northwestern, and Wisconsin lost at Northwestern as an 8-point favorite last year, 20-14. Also, for bettors, keep in mind that Wisconsin has been a terrific team at home, 70-8 straight up, 43-29 against the spread. All right, some of the other teams in the Big Ten West Division would be Nebraska. Jeff, could they challenge the Badgers at all?
Okay, well, Nebraska, they returned 6 on offense, 6 on defense. New coach, Mike Riley, of course, brings that pro-style attack. The maniacal Bo Pelini is out of there. It's probably not a minute too soon. Not sure they have the right quarterback to run that system for Mike Riley, though. Tommy Armstrong Jr., his strong point is rushing more than passing. He completed 53 of his passes last year, but we'll have to see if he can run that offense. Sophomore quarterback Johnny Stanton hardly played at all last year, so it looks like Armstrong's the leading candidate there. As usual, the running backs are solid. Amani Cross, Terrence Newby, and Adam Taylor. Junior wide receiver Jordan Westerkamp had a fine campaign. Is back along with sophomore wide receiver DeMornay Pearson-L. And on defense, tackles Vincent Valentine and Malik Collins will anchor another decent line for the defense coordinator, Mark Banker. Junior Nate Jerry should be one of the Big Ten's top defensive backs. Nebraska had a defensive meltdown late last season. The last 4 games, the opponents averaged 41.5 points per game. That includes the game where they were torched by Melvin Gordon for 408 yards. So that's going to be something to have to improve on this year. They're also 22-12 straight up, 21-11 against the spread on the road. and then they're on a 7-3-2 run over the total. That, of course, that was with a different coach. You might have to that could change this season. But they open a home against BYU. They also have home games against South Alabama and Southern Miss. And they play one tough non-conference road game at Miami, Florida. In the conference, they have their toughest opponents at home: Wisconsin, Northwestern, Michigan State, and Iowa. On the road, they have Illinois, Minnesota, Purdue, and Rutgers. So that's a pretty favorable schedule there, because most of the tough games they'll get right there at home. So I'm looking for a 9-3 season for Nebraska, John.
All right, I'm going to take a look at the Iowa Hawkeyes. Kirk Ferentz's team off a 7-6 season, 4-4 in the Big Ten. You got 6 starters back on offense, 7 on defense. The offense was good enough with 28.2 points per game. However, they ranked 56th in passing and 63rd in rushing, and they do have some quarterback changes to keep in mind. They kind of used 2 last year, and the more experienced one, senior Jake Rudock, well, he transferred out. He was pretty good, 16 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and already has 2 full years under his belt, but he transferred to Michigan. So they're putting it all on the junior quarterback, C.J. Beathard. He played some last year, and they do like him, but he only finished with 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 645 yards, just 56.5% completions. He's a good mobile starter. However, doesn't have a lot of experience, and he did start their last game. That was the bowl game against Tennessee. And they lost the game, and he didn't play that well, just 145 yards passing against not a great Tennessee defense. 13 of 23 passing in the game, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. May have to go back to the ground game a little more, which Ferentz likes, because this offensive line should be very strong. You got Austin Blythe at center back, and you got a pair of terrific guards in Sean Wells and Jordan Walsh returning. And they've got a running back, a senior in Jordan Kanzeri, 4.8 yards per carry, almost 500 yards rushing. And the passing game should be okay, because you got 2 of the top 3 targets are back, including 6'2" senior wide receiver Tevon Smith with 596 yards. The Hawkeye defense was outstanding last year and should be again with 7 starters back. They allowed just 18.9 points per game. That was 9th in the nation. And their key players are back too. You got some linebackers in Bo Bauer, Josie Jewell up front, and the secondary has Desmond King returning and Jordan Lomax at safety, as well as cornerback Greg Megan. There's a lot of defensive talent returning on both sides, the secondary and up on the line. And then you've got Desmond King. I mentioned him. He's one of the rising stars on defense. And Jordan Lomax, he's a lot impact trophy list. So they've got a lot of talent, and they should be one of the top 20 in defense again. The schedule for the Hawkeyes, well, they got the big game with the rivalry game in week 2 as usual with Iowa State, and that's a revenge game as they dropped that one a year ago. And then they got some road games at Wisconsin, Northwestern, Indiana, and Nebraska that are certainly going to be challenging. The way I'm looking at Iowa is should have a winning season in the 7-8 mark and a bowl, and because of that defense, they could actually be better than that. But here's the thing. I like to play totals, and Iowa is on a 6-1-1 run over the total coming into this season. I don't see that continuing. The question marks with the quarterback. The ground game should be pretty good, and this defense is going to be great. So I see Iowa being a lot involved in a lot of low-scoring games. I'm going to look at them in September and early October as a team to look at under the total. All right, Jeff, Northwestern is a team that has had some winning seasons a couple of years ago at 10-3, but they've struggled the last couple of years. How can you handicap this Wildcat bunch?
Well, they never recovered from that game against Ohio State in 2013. If you remember, they started the season 4-0. They had high expectations. They were ahead just about the whole game, and then they blew it in the last minute. Ohio State scored one ahead. And what made it worse for bettors, Northwestern was getting 6.5 points. They were losing by they were covering the spread, and then as time ran out, Ohio State recovered a fumble and ran it in and covered the spread. It was just one of the worst bad beats you could ever think of. I remember Brent Musburger on the TV he couldn't say exactly what was happening, but he just kept saying, "Oh my goodness, oh my goodness." Everybody knew what was happening, but ever since that game, Northwestern just hasn't recovered. After that game, they lost 7 in a row, and since that game, they were 6-14 straight up and against the spread. It's funny how one game can change a program around. We saw it 10 years ago with Fresno State when they almost beat SC in 2005, and it took them 7 years to recover from that. So that's just one of those things. Quarterback situation is pretty unsettled here. 6'4" senior Zach Oliver Played in that last game last year. It was a loss to Illinois. It was 23 of 38, 221 yards, 1 TD. He had 3 interceptions. Also in the mix there would be sophomore quarterback Matt Alvidi and redshirt freshman quarterback Clayton Thorson. So, but quarterback's going to be a big question mark. Running back Justin Jackson returns after a standout freshman season. And the receiving corps lost some key players. Senior Dan Vitale and 6'3" senior Cameron Dickerson in the back. So the defense is going to be the strong point in this team. Last year, the Northwestern allowed 25.2 points per game, and that's going to be the team that's going to hopefully carry this team this year. But I don't see more than 5 wins here. The schedule, they open at home like versus Stanford, and they also have Eastern Illinois and Ball State at home. They have a non-conference game at Duke. And then in the Big Ten, all on the road, they have to play Michigan, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and then at home they have Penn State, Iowa, and Minnesota. So I'm looking at a 5-7 season here for Northwestern, John.
Okay, I'm going to take a look at the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Off a very good season under a terrific coach in Jerry Kill. 8 wins, 5 losses. They were 5-3 in the Big Ten, and they covered games a lot last year, 9-4 against the spread. However, there are quite a few holes to fill, particularly on the offense. They were very productive with 28.4 points per game and one of the best running teams in the country, 215.5 yards rushing. That was 30th in the nation. However, they lost some key pieces on offense. Junior quarterback Mitch Leidner, he's back. Just 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and 51.5% completions. Making matters worse for him, he lost his top target, so they have to replace some of their key wide receivers. They do have KJ May back, the top pass catcher, but only 298 yards last year. If they can get some help from a couple of big freshmen coming in, Rashad Steele and Hunter Register will help both those guys, 6'4" and 6'5", but there's not a lot of experience working with this quarterback. Ground game lost their ace running back in David Cobb, and the leading returning rusher is the quarterback, Leidner. He had 452 yards, just 3.6 yards per carry, so quite a few question marks with a very productive offense last year. The defense has been the strength for the Golden Gophers. They allowed just 24.2 points per game. That was 34th in the nation. And the line is going to be okay, but it's the cornerback, Breon Body Calhoun, who might be one of the most underrated defenders in the country. Very strong secondary, so the concern will be up front. The schedule for Minnesota, they got an early Week 2 game at Colorado State heading out west. And they got some difficult road games too. At Northwestern, they got to play Purdue, and then they're at Ohio State and Iowa. So with the question marks on offense and some difficult scheduling games, I don't know if they can reach 8 wins again. I'm looking at maybe 6 to 7 wins as they fight for a bowl. All right, speaking of rebuilding, what's going on with the Boilermakers in Lafayette?
No, they just can't get any good players anymore. It's pretty simple. They have 8 returning on offense and defense, but would you want these same players again after last season? They were 3-9, 1-7 in the conference. They were 7-5 against the spread, though. But Coach Daryl Hosell just could not, just hasn't had a lot of luck recruiting there at Purdue, and this might be his last season. Danny Etling and Austin Appleby and redshirt freshman David Blau, they're all in the mix for a quarterback, but none of them have shown much. Last year, Etling had 6 TDs, 5 interceptions, completed 55% of his passes. Appleby, 10 TDs, 11 interceptions, 53%. So quarterback's going to be a big question mark. Senior running back Danny Anthrop led the team. He's back, but the Boilermakers need more than that. The receiving corps. The 5'9" sophomore running back Keanu Green's back up, but he only had limited action, but he averaged 7.4 yards per carry. The defense was 99th in the nation. Safety Frankie Williams should be in contention for all Big Ten honors, and linebacking core features promising sophomores Jerome Bentley and Danny Ezechukwu. But the schedule doesn't make much difference, but they open at Marshall. That won't be easy, and they also have games against Indiana State, Virginia Tech, and Bowling Green at home. In the conference, they have Minnesota, Nebraska at home, and on the road, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Northwestern, and Iowa. Purdue's 1-9 straight up, 5-4-1 against the spread on the roads. But listen, on the road, they're allowing 42, 41, 14, 45, 56, so on and so on. It just has not been a team that has looked good last 2 years and doesn't look good this year. So they might pull out 3 wins, John.
All right, the last team in the Big Ten that we're going to look at would be Illinois. This is a team under Tim Beckman, which wasn't bad last year, 6-7. However, they're 4-20 in Big Ten play the last few years, just 3-5 last year, and they were money burners at 5-8 against the spread. Really no excuses to have a winning season this year because, first of all, you got 8 starters back on offense. 9 on defense. The offense was actually pretty good, 25.9 points per game, 249.8 yards passing. That was 49th in the country. And they get back junior quarterback Wes Lunt. You may remember him at Oklahoma State before transferring out. He was actually great last year, 14 touchdowns and 3 picks before a key injury knocked him out. And over his first 5 games, he had over 313 yards passing before the injuries limited him. They also had junior quarterback Aaron Bailey step in playing time. So the quarterback has depth in experience. Ground game, it should be a balanced attack. Lunt can run the football. They also have senior running back Josh Ferguson. He's been very productive the last 2 years. 779 yards 2 years ago, 5.5 yards per carry. And then last year, 5 yards per carry, 735 yards. And the wide receivers are very good. They got their top wide receiver back in Mike Dudek. He's only 5'11", but he's a sophomore. Had over 1,000 yards as a freshman. And they also have 6'3" senior wide receiver Geronimo Allison. He had 598 yards. So really, this offense should be balanced and potent and very good. The bad news is the offensive line, which you also need. Boy, they gave up 37 sacks last year, and that is certainly a key for any improvement. The defense is not as good as the offense. They gave up 34 points per game last year. That was 109th in the nation. In fact, Illinois has allowed over 32 points or more for 3 consecutive years. The problem starts with up front. They just don't have a lack of talent. They can never get a pass rush on opposing quarterbacks, which allows every quarterback really to pick apart an inexperienced secondary. So they're probably going to be a weak defense again. Do have some decent linebackers. That would be the strength of the defense with Mason Monheim and TJ Neal. But still, secondary is a concern, and I don't think they're going to have a very good pass rush. The schedule, 4 of 5 games, home games to start the season. And look what they play. Kent State, Western Illinois, at North Carolina, then Middle Tennessee State in Nebraska. So you're looking at a possible 3-2, 4-1 start, which would get them off to a good start. However, 4 of 6 games on the road late in the season, and we're talking Iowa, Penn State, Purdue, and Minnesota road games. So it's difficult down the stretch. They got to get those wins early, possibly 6 to 7 wins if they can get a few breaks, a winning season. But the way to look at Illinois for me would be a team to look at over the total. It's going to be a good offense. They'll be able to run the ball and pass as long as Lund can stay healthy. He certainly has a lot of talent and experience, but boy, I don't trust this Illinois defense at all. I wouldn't be surprised to see this team going over the total, particularly early when they might sneak up on odds makers. All right, let's tell you some of the specials we have going on. Jim Feist, if you want to sign up for his Early Bird NFL special, 4 weeks of preseason, all 4 weeks of his 5-star plays, as well as his preseason game of the year for $29. Just call the number on your screen. And Jeff Sauter runs Las Vegas Sports Services. You have a special for the entire month of August as well?
Yeah, the entire preseason. You're going to get all of my players' edge selections. Those are the 5-star plays. And you get the entire preseason, the entire month of August, and it's only $19. And this is the time to make money. The preseason is one of the best times of year to make money in any sport. Just call the number on your screen there at LVSS, and you get the entire month is just $19.
All right, we're going to have more college football previews. Big 12 and the Pac-12 and the SEC coming up. You can check out those and more at jimfeist.com. For Jeff Sauter, we'll see you again with another edition of Pro Line.